Hey folks, this week we'll talk about pet peeves in board gaming. Stick around.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
That's right, I'm Mitchell.
And I'm Wayne.
And we are the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about
how we game.
All right, I almost just called you game for some reason.
Yeah,
I just heard the word game. All right, Wayne.
There you go.
What's been going on in your world in terms of board gaming?
Not much. We had a game day this past weekend. We went to Mata Games this time. Had like 7 or 8 people there, so it was pretty good. Got to play a couple of games. Played 4 or 5 games. Carlos taught us Brisca, which is, I guess, Italian and Puerto Rican trick-taking game that he liked, which is kind of cool. I learned that.
What? Carlos wanted to play a trick-taking game?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard of him ever wanting to play anything but trick-taking games. Why am I surprised? No, I'm joking.
That was good. Then he got us to play Quartermaster General. We did a full 6-player game of Quartermaster General, which was fun. It was a fast game. I mean, I don't know if I would say it's like the greatest game. You know, I'm not super in love with it, but it was really fun, really tight. I could see where there could be games where it's blow away, depending on the cards that different countries draw. But I could also see where you can get some real good synergies with countries in there. Dan from the owner of Your Turn, he had Italy, and man, he had played Italy before, and he knew kind of like the order and sequence of cards, and he was really scoring a lot of points for the Axis. I was Japan, and I didn't score a lot of points, but I basically neutered Carlos, who was the United States. Like every time, I just had like the perfect starting hand that every time he tried to create a navy, I sank it. And so, like the first 6 turns of the game, he had all his build Navy cards, and I just killed Navy. And then for the rest of the game, Carlos is like, I can't do anything. I can't build a Navy. You know. So it was good. It was a fun game. We enjoyed it. But the best, I think, of the day was a 5-player game of Scythe. We had they had all the expansions except for the new one, which was interesting because I ended up winning and scoring like I think my all-time high. I scored like 250 something. And I didn't even touch any of the expansion stuff. I just sat and did my base game.
So you're playing with the Wind Gambit and Invaders from Afar, not any of the Rise of Fenris?
I'm sorry, not Scythe. You know what? I misspoke. I didn't mean Scythe. I meant Tapestry.
Tapestry. Okay, so you're playing with Arts and Architecture.
Yes.
And
Plots and Ploys.
But not Fantasies and Futures.
Not Fantasies and Futures. Yeah, I can't. I totally misspoke.
Yeah, you said you got 200-something points in Scythe, and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out how this happened.
Stonemaier games, they all blend together, right? No, Tapestry.
Okay.
I played Tapestry a bunch on BGA, and I just could never. I broke 200 a couple times. I was getting like 175, 150, just consistently. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And so I finally got to play it in.
So this is your first hard copy play of Tapestry.
First hard copy play,
isn't it? So do you understand better how to play now? Because like your income and stuff, you got to see how that works as the buildings come off. You know,
right? Yeah, and I realized, you really need to get buildings and fill out your board to score points, and you really need to get to the end of a row of your houses, basically, or the barracks, or whatever the various those things are, because when you get to the end of those lines, you can really score a lot of points, and if you do it mid-game, then you still have like a couple more turns to really kind of rake in extra points, and that's what I kind of did.
I know it's been a slow burn, but I'm glad that the Tampa crew is finally appreciating Tapestry.
Yeah, it was a very slow burn. I think, honestly, I do think one of the benefits of BGA is being able to play all these cool games online. One of the downfalls of BGA is, especially with games like that, until you play it in person, you don't really quite get it.
Yes.
And so that's that's why I will probably give Scythe another try. I know I played Scythe once in person years ago and kind of didn't like it because I think they just had too much in the game for me to really grasp at that time. And I've played it online a bunch, so I think both Tapestry and Scythe might go up in my viewpoint with more live plays for sure. I don't think I'll ever own them just because getting into it right now would probably be pretty pricey. But I know enough people that own copies, so yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good. It was all around. And then I think the last thing I'll talk about is I'm super stoked because I got a copy of Comic Hunters.
He's holding it up proudly, like a proud papa for those of you that.
And I didn't have to overpay for it. I didn't it was great because I realized my kid plays soccer and he's really good friends with the neighbor across the street, and I totally just didn't it didn't occur to me that they're from Brazil. And so a couple weeks ago, he mentioned that they were gonna, right after school was over, they were gonna go down with the family to visit family down in Brazil. And then I'm like, oh, you're gonna be down there? Yeah. Could you do me a favor? Could you? He's like, what? I'm like, well, I'm gonna send you a link to this board game, and if you can find it, could you get me a copy? And he did. And it was funny because he texted me and he's like, the conversion rate. He was like, oh, this isn't it's like 400. I don't know what the currency is in Brazil, but it was like this game is like $400. What are you doing? Are you sure you want this? I'm like, $400? Hell no. And then he texted me back. He said, no, that's Brazilian. It's like $70 American or $75 American. I'm like, oh, yeah, done. Please, take it.
That's funny, that a weird like convergence of two different worlds, your neighbors and board games. And
Yeah. And then they happened to be from Brazil, so I'm excited. And it was really cool, though, is I think my wife collected comic books, and her and her dad collected comic books together. And so I showed her the game last night, and I said, hey, baby, I think you'd like this game because, it's a game about collecting comic books, and all the cards are... and she was like, "Oh my God, that's so cool! I want to play that." So we're probably going to play it on her Twitch stream in the next week or so because she's excited to play it. So
cool.
That's my recently games and plays and stuff like that. So I know you got like one thing to talk about. So what's that?
Well, yeah, actually, so while we were talking, I remember something else I do want to bring up. So the first thing I want to bring up is literally last night, the Beans and Dice BGA tournament for Draftosaurus started up, and I have never played Draftosaurus before, so kind of trial by fire. But it's really simple rule set, and honestly, I feel like this tournament is going to go by in no time. Like, in my first game, we're already, I think maybe 4 turns deep in, 12 hours, maybe less than 12 hours, something like that. I like it. I mean, it might be one I might have to get in person, be able to play with the family. The only thing I'll say is, from a first-timer's perspective, just remembering what all the rules are for the different pens and how they score. I'm sure it's one that, in your second or third play, you're really going to understand. But that's just taking me a second. Sometimes I'm having to go down to the bottom and read what's going on with each pen. But it's good so far. How's your game going?
Going good, yeah. I mean, I've played a ton of this in person and in real life. So in person and in BGA, excuse me. And it's a great game. It's really super simple. I taught it to my brother's family. They loved it. I played it with my kid. 2-player, it's really good because with 2-player, it's really interesting because you get all the same amount of dinosaurs pretty much. And when you draft one, you're going to discard one. So you can kind of if I look over at your board and I go, oh, he wants all those red ones. Or he wants all the T-Rexes, I can discard one. So the 2-player game is a little bit more strategic. You have to be careful where you're building, what you're building. I think it's really cool. That can be a little luck is just what dinosaurs you draw. But I think you can mitigate that a little bit and just realize that, every couple of turns when you're the one rolling a die, you can play anywhere.
Right.
So you can plan ahead knowing hey, this turn I'm going to play it in the pen of love where you have to have 2 of the same. And then I just have to know, in the next 3 or 4 turns, any chance I get to put one there, I am. But if not, on my next turn, if I get that dinosaur, I got to put it there to make, So there's sort of some strategy there, but it's really fun, simple, quick game, and you can play I don't know if the tournament we're doing double-sided where we're going
to we're going to switch after 6.
So you can play the game even faster if you just do one side, right? You just it's 12 dinosaurs done, score, or the other side, or you can do the winter summer thing. So it's really
now
cool.
For me, I'm not really planning ahead of this point. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. Like, oh yeah, let's put this one here. I'm sure by the second game, or at least the second round, I'll be able to have a little bit more long-term strategy. Real quick, can you hear my cat? He is growling out. He wants to go outside. Okay, good. Good to know. That means people at home probably can't hear him either.
Right.
All right. The other thing I want to bring up real quick, I forgot. And I was talking to Wayne before we started saying, all the games I've been playing lately have been games that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just remembered we played Tortuga 1667 last night, which that's from Facade Games. They're the ones who have they look like books.
The little
all
books.
The boxes.
Yeah, I was interested in those.
Yeah, so Bristol, Deadwood, Salem, all that. Anyway, so I played this one in Bristol at Gen Con back in 2021, and I picked this one up because it was fun if you have a bigger group of people. It's basically like a social deduction game where you're pirates and you're trying to figure out who's British and who's French. But I ran into an issue last night that made it very unfun for me. So we were playing with an odd number of people. If you have an odd number, really the game is not designed to play with an odd number of people. And if you have an odd number, you're like, oh, you're the Dutch, and you just want them to have equal scores at the end, which is really lazy in my opinion. So I was the Dutch. Woohoo! So, I don't really have a side to be fighting for. I'm trying to help both sides. But the way it worked is, so once all the gold was claimed, at that point, I just want the end game to come because it was balanced. The British had the same amount of gold as the French. So for me to win, I just wanted the game to end in that situation. So the game ends whenever the deck runs out. And there are ways to look at cards before you do what they say. But me, I just wanted it to be fast. So I was just using my action to just play cards off the top without even looking at them, which is dangerous. And what happened was there's this card called an albatross. I don't know if this is a pirate superstition or something, but it says if there are 2 albatrosses on the same ship, then everyone on the ship gets marooned. I don't know if that's a bad luck sign for pirates. Well, I ended up getting 2 albatrosses, which means I couldn't go on any ship because as soon as I would walk on, I would get marooned because I have 2 albatrosses. So I was stuck on this island and I really couldn't do anything anymore. And it's okay, the game is over for me essentially, and I'm just watching other people play and hoping somehow they tie, which how in the world they're going to tie whenever I'm the only one who wants them to tie. So That's the first time I've encountered that in that game, but otherwise, a pretty solid social deduction game, pretty light and quick. It can go up to, I think, 8 players, so it's good if you have a bigger group and you need a nice filler game.
Yeah.
Have you played this one yet?
I have not. I have not played any of those little book games. I'm kind of interested in them. They're all sort of like a little social deduction-y, or like there's a lot more player
like I played Bristol, which is basically COVID, the board game, but you're on these carts leaving this town, and you're having to figure out who has the plague and kick them off of your cart before you escape so they don't bring the plague with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to try some of those. If I see any of the Dice Diary, I definitely want to give them a shot. I have them kind of on my secondary wish list in Amazon, thinking these might be cool games. I also I want to buy them because they look cool on a bookshelf. You know,
exactly. Anytime you break it out or somebody sees it for the first time, they're very surprised that it's not actually a book.
Yeah,
like the boxes are very cool.
It's like I have all the Tales and something games where it's all like the Pied Piper, the three pigs, like the tortoise and hare, and they're all book shaped, so they're all kind of like on a shelf.
That's a game?
Yeah. So there's Aiello years ago came out with a series of kids games, and each one there's Baba Yaga, there's the tortoise and hare, there's Pied Piper, there's like 7 or 8 of them, and they look like books, and when you open it up, it's the game is inside of it. And there's a little book inside of that tells you the tales,
that's
tales
cool.
and fables or something. It's a whole series. They're out.
That sounds like
Aiello.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it was good though. And they brought them. They were like some French company that brought them over, and Aiello put them out here. So
cool.
But so that's it. So speaking about odd number of players being kind of like and then also being stuck and not being able to do anything. I think that might even be in the list of things that I have for today.
What a great transition then.
Yeah, exactly. What a great transition. So what we thought about today is, I don't know, what's been on my mind. They always kind of like the grumpy guy in the group. Sometimes I always complain, but I just thought I was reading the thing about just like pet peeves in board gaming, and it was a bigger topic of like just anything that kind of bothers you, right? So the guy eating at the table, or the guy with the cell phone at the table. But I thought about like, well, what are the things about the actual games, actual board games themselves that bother me, or that are pet peeves, or that annoy people? And I came up with a list. This spoiler on the inside, Mitchell and I talking about it at the podcast, what we're going to talk about, and I threw out a couple of them, and he's like, I don't even know if I can think of it anymore. Then you came up with it, like, oh, I can. So I pivoted, and what I did is I came up with a list. I have a bunch. We can go for a little bit, and then we can cut it. But what I thought is, I'll give you the pet peeve or what it is, and then you have to just, off the top of your head, Mitchell, give it a rating of 1 to 10. 1 is I could care less. That doesn't bother me at all. Or 10, I'm enraged like Louis Black's character from the was Inside Your Head movie, was the Pixar movie.
Inside Out.
Inside Out, yeah.
He's
rage-inducing, rage-inducing. And then like why, and just a quick sentence and like what you think about it, okay?
I like this. So for the viewers, everybody knows I never complain, right? No, that's not true. I definitely have strong opinions whenever I don't like a game, but I think in general, for me, it's not like it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what I don't like about a game. So very rarely is something, or I'm assuming, these things you're going to list, is it going to be a blanket no for me or a blanket like anger thing for me, especially because I'm not big on theme and components. But we'll see. I'm interested. I'm really hoping it's going to be like, this makes me really mad, and I'm going to be like, meh. But we'll see. We'll see.
A total flop, but we'll see. Yeah.
No. I don't think that's a flop. I think that's awesome content.
Is it?
It's conflict.
Yeah. Conflict. Yeah. All right. So let's start off with the first one. So components in a game that are either too similar in color or not clearly defined. Example: Maglev Metro, the gold and bronze color pieces.
Okay, so I would say 99% of the time I don't care about this, because 99% of the time I've seen it, it's like different enough that I can still tell. Now, Maglev Metro didn't bother me that much. Like, I could see, it's like, okay, these are similar. It may take me like a second glance. The one that's the worst, though, have you played the collector's edition of Red Rising before they changed the pieces?
I've seen it, yes.
Yeah, that's horrible. And the worst thing about Red Rising is, like, you can't vertically store it. And so it's got a great organizer, but as soon as you vertically store it, everything dumps out. So literally the first thing you have to do every time you open the game, unless you hold it perfectly horizontally every time between, is like split out all the things, and you really cannot tell the difference until you see, okay, I've got 20 that look this color, 20 that look this color, 20 that look this color. Now let's see, when I shine the light this way, I can kind of see this one looks different. And to be fair, Stegmaier realized that was a problem and fixed it. So I'm going to say for that, because honestly, Red Rising is the only game it's ever truly bothered me in, I'm going to give it a 2 on my scale.
2, okay. Not that bad, all right.
Do you have any input into that or specifics?
No, other than I can't play. It was Maglev Vetra was so bad for me. Maybe it's my vision and bad eyes or whatever. But I literally took a black magic marker and put little dots on all the gold.
That's
ones.
awesome.
Because I'm like, screw it. I'm not playing it again until it.
It was, again, I could see how they're similar, but I never really had more. Maybe once or twice I would have to take a second glance, but it never was like debilitating for me.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
All right. So let's do the next one here. Expansion cards that are clearly not the same color as the original cards.
Okay, so you're talking about like, so you could tell before you pick up the card that it's an expansion card, right?
Yep.
Well, I do take a little bit of issue with that because, if you're waiting on a certain card, and then you see that the next card in the deck is different, and so it's not going to be that card, so it affects the way you play. I think that is a bigger deal. However, I think whether or not this happens, at least for me who's anti-sleeving, especially if it's a game I play a lot, I'm already going to be able to tell if it's an expansion card because it's not going to be as aged. Like that happens with Terraforming Mars. Every time I would get a new expansion, we would know whenever we were drawing a card from the new one because like this card's pristine compared to these others that are, dog-eared a little bit. So it bothers me, but not a crazy amount because of what I just said about I can already tell them apart. So I'm going to put it at a 3. So we're moving up.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten you yet. All right, here we go. Let's try this one. No player aids or not enough player aids for all the players. You have to share.
One of these bothers me a lot more than the other. I would rather you have no player aids than have not enough for every player. So I would say most games, my group, we don't really use player aids unless like maybe when I'm teaching and I'll just reference different icons. So in that case, I don't mind like using the back of the rulebook. So I think I have to score these two separately, Wayne.
Okay, all right.
Not having a player aid, I couldn't care less. I think put it on 1. And now if I'm constantly playing with new people who need that, I could see that, but that's not usually my demographic. Now, giving player aids and not giving enough for everybody, ooh, that's pretty high. I'm going to go 7, I think.
All right.
Because even though I don't use them, if you have them, people want them. So that if you have to, put it between them or pass them around, then that's taking up gaming time that you could be using to do other games. And stop me if this one's on your list, but one that I probably hate even more is double-sided player aids. And now it's different if it's double-sided player aids and there's one for every player and you're playing with 2 people in a 4-player game, just give each person 2, right? But that's kind of in the same category as not giving enough because like it's supposed to be like a quick reference, and it's not quick if I have to pick up the card and observe both sides, So just with all that in mind, I'd put it as a 7.
Okay, all right. So I got you. I'm getting you up there. Let's see if I can
You're riling me up a little bit.
You up a little bit.
This is fun. I like it.
All right, so here's one. Here's a great game organization one. Weird off-size box shapes.
So it only bothers me in terms of can I fit it on my shelf or can I fit it in my bag? So it is a bother, but like I don't care about aesthetics. Like, oh no, this one's smaller than that one. It doesn't look pretty on my shelf. It's just like literally, can I fit it on my shelf? And because I recently had to buy a new off-brand Calyx just because my old shelves were full, it's going to irk me a little bit more. I'm going to go with 5. Because right in the middle, because I can't hate on it too much. Because the good thing is because I'm very like unorganized with it. Like if it's not stacked well, then I have this weird off-shaped box. Like hey, it can fit right there in that hole that a standard box couldn't fit in. So I'm in the middle. I'm on 5.
All right, 5. Okay.
I'm looking at my shelf over here as we're talking about it.
Now here's another. You don't necessarily get rid of games ever, so I can imagine this one maybe not being a big one for you. But clearly, an expansion that was planned when the base game came out, but it has no way of fitting in the base box.
Interesting. So just the idea of a planned expansion not releasing with the game irks me. Like I can't stand a Kickstarter and it's like plus an included expansion. That's not an included expansion. That's part of the game. Like that's like some weird video game mentality. It's like a DLC or something. So again, I think I have to take these separately. So like for example, whenever there's a Kickstarter, rarely do I Kickstart, but if there's a Kickstarter, it's like, pay X number of extra dollars for an included expansion. It's like, that's like an oxymoron. I very, very rarely go in for the add-on of the expansion just because it's like, it just feels dirty. It feels like cash grabby. It's like, you have this design, just give it to me, Now, if it's not going to fit in the box, that is that is irksome to me. I really like the expansions to fit in the box. I know that Jamie Stegmaier's recently fixed this with Tapestry, but I'm a big Tapestry fan. And literally after the first expansion for Tapestry came, the only way I was able to fix it, because I hate keeping original expansion boxes, is literally dumping out the original insert. And then I had my buddy Jeremy, he printed me a new insert, but then they came out with another expansion. So that's a big frustrating thing for me. I'm having trouble landing on a number, but it's going to be high up there. If I combine both of these frustrations together, let's go 8. How about 8?
There we go. All right. So speaking of inserts,
okay,
no clearly defined way or no directions on how to actually use the insert included in the box.
So I think it depends on how many different types of components there are. So, if it's a simple game and there's not a lot of components, usually I can figure it out on my own. But if it's something like, what is it? You have Mysterium?
I have friends that do, yeah.
That insert is incredibly well designed, but we spend as much time picking up the game as we do setting up the game, because it's like, where do these things go? Yeah, that's a big, I'm trying to think of other examples, but there's definitely some that I have. I'm really, really bad at putting stuff back in boxes. I'm not as bad as Carlos, just dumping it in. But usually I have to send it over to my wife or someone to put back in. Would I give 8 to the last one? I'm just thinking comparatively. Let's go 9 on that. That's a big. That irks me.
All right. Yeah. All right.
You are getting me more than I thought you would, to be honest.
I say, there we go. I'm getting it. All right. I'm going to go. These next few, I think, are going to deal with the rules. Okay.
Okay.
So let's start with just a higher topic, and then I'm going to get more specific. So,
sure.
Just badly written rule books.
Well, that's pretty bad. Whenever I feel like I can write the rule book better than a professional, that drives me nuts. Now, I understand sometimes it's a translation thing. Like, I think it's like Millie Fiore, for example. I like that game. Rulebook's not good, and I think it's just a translation thing. So it depends. A lot of these publishers, they will pay Watch It Played or something like that to make a video. So if they put that effort in, I can kind of forgive a bad rule book. But at the end of the day, even if it's Rodney, I don't really trust anybody to teach me a game. I got to read the rule book on my own. Like, pretty much anytime somebody teaches me a game, before I play it again, I will read the entire rule book. So this is one. I think I'm going to go around let's go 7 again. So It's bothersome, but sometimes there's other avenues, so it's not all the way up there.
Sure. All right. How about then? It's more a more direct one is confusing iconography or similar iconography within the same game. And the example I would give, if you played Heat Pedal to the Metal.
Haven't played it yet. So.
Okay. Because that was one we just played recently, and they had like two of the symbols were basically the same. It's just one was inverted or something like that. And you're like, really? I got to figure out which one's which half the time. It's hard to some of the Arkham Horror ones and like that. The symbols are always kind of similar, and they're small. They're circular serpents and things like that. So
what is the prompt again? Similar icons,
similar iconography, or just similar or confusing iconography.
Yeah, I guess I put that, like you said, kind of in the same categories as like a bad rule book, maybe around like a 7, because I feel like the first few plays it's going to be frustrating, but eventually you're going to figure it out if it's a game you play multiple times. So I'll put it somewhere in the mid-high.
All right, cool. All right, so we got a big game, right? You got a huge ton of rules. It's a big campaign game, or some of the other games that have all these crazy terms, and you don't put a glossary of those terms in the back that makes it easy to reference.
So I can understand how some people would be bothered by this. It doesn't bother me a crazy amount because, again, if I'm going to be playing this game, I do plan to read the rule book cover to cover. And if there's something I'm not sure about, I'm just going to go back and read the original part. Now, I know there are obviously edge cases where like a card comes up and it's like, okay, we need to get the order of operations and the semantics just right. I think I can put that at around like a 3. I think it's lazy. I think, again, I could see why other people would have issue with it, but just because I like to be a scholar of the rule book, if it's a game I know I'm going to play, I don't think I'm going to need that rules reference as much as other people.
Okay. I think this one might get you. Games where you have to construct pieces, but those pieces cannot go back into the box without being deconstructed every time.
If we can add on the fact that the pieces are completely irrelevant, I'll give it a 10. Everdell. My gosh, Everdell. And Wild Serengeti. Like, literally all we need is that top branch to tell us how many workers we get each time. You got me on this one. Because here's the thing. I hate deconstructing and reconstructing those things. So either I'm going to leave it constructed and it's just going to sit on my shelf forever, or I'm not going to build it and I'm just going to use the one piece I need. Or, as is the case with Everdell, I'll just never play it. And I own it. You got me there. That is a 10. That is a 10.
Get you there, yeah. And this is a similar one that you put all the pieces back in the box, and no matter what you do, there's box lift.
Oh, yeah, that bothers me too. I think that's another 10. I used to care about this less earlier in my, collecting in the hobby because I don't know, it's just like I'm worried about the game. But now that, I have so many games and I have them displaying on a shelf, even though they're haphazardly there, box lift can mess up other boxes. It makes it harder to fit other games in. I think I'm going to go with a 10 on that one as well.
All right. See, look at that. I got you a few of them. So
yeah.
All right. How about this one?
Up.
Yeah. Games in which there's a score track, but it moves in a weird pattern.
Oh, that's pretty bad. So, little anecdote. I'm designing a board game, and I did send a board off to be printed, but it's taking a while. So we've been using a piece of paper, and my kids have this copy of Chutes and Ladders that we're using just as a score track for right now. But it's snakes. So it always happens. We don't realize it's snakes, and we go to restart on the other end of the line, and it's like, oh no, we went the wrong way. So, and honestly, it does bother me, but at the same time, like, I understand. So if it snakes, you don't have to pick it up and bring it back around. But if it doesn't snake, then you can just it's 10. I can move it down to the next line. I don't have to count, So it's a scoring track that's confusing. Is that what it was?
Yeah, or just a scoring track that has a weird pattern to it.
It's hard. I think I'm going to go in the middle on 5. Because, like I said, sometimes it has a use and it has a reason for being that way, and it's user error. So 5.
All right.
Are you like averaging these out? I see you.
I don't know. Yeah, it'd be good. I usually have to do that. I think we've been. You start off with a couple of low ones, and you had a couple of me. You've been kind of all over the place. It's good. All right. So how about this? Games that take more time to teach or set up than actually play.
So I think this depends on whether I'm the teacher or the learner. If I'm the learner, this is a real quick way to make me never want to play the game again. If I'm the teacher and I'm the only one who knows how to set up the game, that's understandable from my perspective. I usually try to keep my teachers short. If it's because people are refusing to help set up, that's another thing. So I think it really depends on the perspective, and because of that, I'm not going to go all the way to 10. But let's say an 8. But if it's specifically as the learner, it would be a 10. But because I'm seeing both sides of it, I'll go with 8.
All right, cool. So games that have miniature-sized cards or not standard-sized cards that require you to shuffle them on a regular basis.
I don't care.
Okay.
Because I don't riffle shuffle anyway, so regardless, I'm just doing this.
Okay, you're doing the overhand shuffle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I play Mansions of Madness, and I play Gloomhaven, and I do other things. They have these miniature cards, and I know overhand shuffling is probably the way I would do it most of the times, but I know that riffle shuffling is the most effective method to truly get a balance. But yeah, I end up doing little deal out
piles.
stacks and then piles.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Pile them. It's just
anytime I get a
longer.
game for the first time where they have all the there's 10 of these cards, then 10 of these cards in the deck, and you have to really do it well, I make piles.
Okay. Needlessly large or overly small boards that either take up way too much table space or not enough to be visible.
Interesting. So I guess let me give a little bit of perspective on this. Let's say last night I was playing one of the Tiny Epic games the other day. The idea that a game is small, I don't care about that much. In a box. So basically the whole conceit of Tiny Epic games. I don't travel with my games that much. It's usually at my house or at a friend's house that isn't that far. So the fact that it fits in a small box doesn't really bother me. The amount of space Tiny Epic games take up, though, where you have to like lay out cards to make the board and stuff, I don't like that just because like it's hard to move it around once it's set up. But if it takes up too much space for no reason or is small for no reason? That's the prompt, right? Mm-hmm. Honestly, I mean, obviously I've had situations where a game is a table hog, but have I ever been in the situation where I was like, this is a table hog and it doesn't need to be? I know we've had discussions at game nights like, oh, this could have been done a little bit differently so it wouldn't take up as much space, but I don't know if I would say it's a frustration. So I can understand it, but I haven't ever really complained about it. I put it at maybe like a 4.
Okay, yeah. I can't think of too many examples, but I mean, there's a lot of war games that have like, you know, spaces that are just way too big, and it's like, or like have tons of extra graphics, where I'm like, just eliminate most of that noise and just simplify the board. I think a good example for me and of a middle ground of that is actually Clans of Caledonia, which I don't think you've played.
No, I've not.
But people complained about it because what the guy made the game like 30% smaller than than most Euro games are, right? And so the box is small, everything fits in the bike super tight, and the board it's a big game. I mean, it's like a Terra Mystica, you know, it's a really fairly heavy kind of Euro-ish game, and it doesn't take up 3/4 of your table. It's not a massive table hog, you know, and so. But then conversely, like the Tiny Epic games try to be small and they end up being a table hog anyway because they spread out so much. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. One that I know that you're not going to care about probably is inserts that don't fit sleeved cards.
Yeah, 1. Can I go 0? Can I go negative?
Yeah, can you go negative? Yeah, I'm the same. I actually, it's more of a pet peeve. People complaining about Kickstarters that didn't accommodate sleeved cards in the game. I'm like, you know, I can't imagine that the majority of people sleeve all their games.
No, I understand that complaint. I mean, if you really care about a game, if you're going to be ordering the Wingspan nesting box, you know, or the Everdell Complete Collectors, whatever, you're spending a lot of money. You probably want to protect those components. I can understand wanting the sleeves to fit in, but for me, I don't care. Sleeves make my life more difficult.
Yeah, I'm sleeving for Comic-Coners, right? Because we're probably gonna get a ton of play between now and Dice Tower East of a lot of the Beans of Dice folks, but it's a game I can't replace easily, right? Most of the games I can replace easily, so I only sleeve the games I can never replace, you know, type of thing. All right, so here's one that doesn't affect, I don't think, either of us, but it's something definitely that I've become more cognizant of. Is no graphical accommodations for colorblind players.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect anyone in my group. And so, I'm not trying to get canceled here, but here's the thing. Do I think it's important? Yes. Do I think that color blindness is as common? How do I want to say this? Okay, I feel like it's a disproportionate amount of rage when it's not compared to the percentage of people that it's going to affect. Because there are people with plenty of disabilities that there's no accommodation made for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So nothing against colorblind people. I absolutely believe that they should be accommodated. Or maybe accommodated is the wrong word. But like, what about all the other people that are not? You know?
Yeah, no, I feel it. I get what you're saying. I do think it's similar to the sleeving thing in my opinion. It's like there's a smaller group of people that are affected by it that get maybe a disproportionate amount of the attention. But I'll say this though, is as I get older and as I've realized I do have vision problems, you know, like I actually should be wearing glasses right now. Right? I have both nearsighted, farsighted, and astigmatism, and so I'm not really colorblind. But I've actually found it more beneficial. I find myself looking more at the icons than colors more now.
Yeah.
And like yellows and oranges tend to blend in for me, especially online. Like there was the longest time when we were playing Rallyman GT that I didn't even notice like the difference between a red and an orange hue, right? Mm-hmm. So I totally agree. And I think it's really just sort of a trend that we're going to see more and more games do that. And I think if you have a big Kickstarter game or a big new game, if you have new games coming out now, or I think if you're reprinting a game that was previously printed, you should probably, you know, do something to have at least some kind of icon to make it easy between the usually it's like red, green, colorblind is the most common. It's like 10%.
Now, I will say that the fix for colorblindness, it's fairly simple. Just make sure you have those icons. So I guess I can see some of the outrage that people have, even if they're not suffering from it, even if people they know don't suffer from it, because it's like, why wouldn't you do this? It's just, I guess,
it's just
maybe
a pattern. Just put a pattern in the color. Yeah. And it's, for sure. Now, so it bothers me, but it doesn't bother me because I'm not affected by it as much.
Right, and not to sound like, oh, it's not my problem, but yeah, you know, I know. But for example, so Stegmeyer just did like these visual friendly cards for Wingspan. I don't think I've ever heard of a publisher doing that. Like, oh wow, people who are, have vision problems, but they're not fully blind, just making them bigger, the text bigger and clearer for those kind of people.
Remove the flavor text and make the rules text bigger.
Yeah, so like, why are people not getting behind that? I think that's probably more of a problem than color blindness.
And that's actually was on my list too, is text that's way too small.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to kind of put these two together if you want, but
sure.
it's like, it's another situation where like, again, I'm not the youngest guy, but I'm not to the point where like, that's a problem for me. I'm sure as I get older, it could be.
You haven't hit your mid-40s yet, right? So
yeah. So again, I don't want to sound like a jerk, like, oh, it's not my problem, so it doesn't matter. But just in my experience, both of these are pretty low for me. I don't want to go like a full 1 and be like, yeah, I don't care about other people. But, this is my experience that we're talking about.
Right, exactly.
It's a very personal
absolutely.
thing. So I'll put both of those on like a 2.
Yeah.
But ask me again in 10 years, and it may be different.
It may be different. Yeah, because and I'll say this, maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought about these things. But I get in recent months, and now that and I can tell, like in the last few months when I've gone to game day, I'll bring my reading glasses with me. And the times I forget it, I'm like, oh crap! I wish I had my glasses because I'm not gonna be able to read that like as quick as easily. So seeing text from far away, it definitely does make a difference in time. All right, this one is miniatures that are too impossible to tell apart without painting or doing something to differentiate them.
That's a good one. Yeah. So for me, miniatures are cool. Yeah, but it wouldn't make a crazy ton of difference for me if it was a standee. The concept of painting miniatures, I think, was cool whenever that was the rage and whenever it was earlier on in my board game experience. But since my wife has been painting my Blood Rage miniatures for like years now and are still not done, realistically, my miniatures are not going to get painted. So if you're sending me something that until I paint them, it's basically non-functioning, that's going to bother me. And it's trying to be aesthetic, but whenever the expected aesthetic benefit of painting it is actually detrimental until you paint it. Yeah, that's a big one for me. I might put that at like 9.
Yeah, that's up there. And I think the other one too is like the I think it's Mosaic with the bigger version of Mosaic that they have like 5 army pieces and 3 army pieces, but the size difference is relatively close that if you're looking from a distance, it's hard to tell. Like stuff like that too, like especially in wargaming, like making the pieces different in size and look and tenor to know the different unit counts. It's a good one. So, all right, so I got 2 more that are about games themselves, but potentially about people in the games, and I know that may be another topic for another day. So, but I'll start with these.
Yeah,
but games where the potential winner is set halfway through the game, like this person's going to win the game. Do we really need to sit here for the next hour and a half?
I guess it depends on the length of the game. So yeah, if it's a 3-hour game and there's a clear-cut winner halfway through, there's no way for other people to catch up. That's pretty frustrating. If it's a lighter, quicker game, or if there's some clear catch-up mechanics that, there's even a chance, that's a tough one because I feel like it's a lot of games that I like. Can potentially be in that situation. And I guess there's a difference between, is it possible for this to happen or is it always going to happen? Now, if it's always going to happen, yeah, I think that's a bigger issue. There's just so many variables with this one. I don't want to go too extreme because... Yeah, I think I'm going to go with like a 5, a good happy medium.
Okay. All right, last one is the ability for the loser, last place person, to kingmake and decide who wins the game if 2 players are close at the end.
I think that depends on the game group. Obviously, you don't want that always to happen, but I feel like if that's sometimes a situation, then how you have played in that game, your honor and things like that, kind of meta gaming it can come into effect. Especially, and I know this is not necessarily a game that's like that, but like think of like Game of Thrones. If there's someone you betrayed and someone who they didn't betray and they get to pick between the two, it's like, well, maybe, even though betraying helped you mechanically in the game, is it going to help you win? Like in games that have that kind of situation, I actually like that. I'm trying to think of an example where it's been... But see, the problem is it depends on your game group. So if it's a situation where it's like, oh, well, Mitchell won the last 5 games, so I don't want him to win this one, so I'm going to get that. That can be, frustrating. So, there's times when I think it's thematic and times whenever it's not. So let me give it a think it's gonna be lower than you're expecting. I'm gonna give it like a 6.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Right around the middle point there, which is fine. So, I think those are all the ones I really had. I guess the question. Go ahead.
You said you have more, but like we're gonna save them for another time.
No, what I was thinking of, if like I think what we're gonna do is we're totally gonna ask the audience, like, one, do you have other pet peeves about physical games, about board games? Don't get into playing and what it's like to play the game or at the table or players. Just your pet peeves about board games. And get in our Discord, get in the Beans and Dice Discord, go to the podcast section, post other ones that you missed, that I missed. If you can think of other pet peeves that we missed in this topic, definitely post them in our Discord so we could talk about them. And then obviously, if you have really strong feelings about some of these that I've posted, I'd love to hear what people think about them. But I think if this is successful, if we hear some feedback that people liked it, I think I could create a list of pet peeves of players, right? Pet peeves about conventions. We could do like every couple of months do a ranker episode of how do you view these things?
This was a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite podcasts we've done, so I appreciate you putting in the work to make the list.
Yeah.
I was very surprised that you got me a couple more than one time.
Yeah.
Did you rank these as well?
I didn't. I probably will. I guess go back and rank them.
I'd love to see how we compare.
Yeah, probably pretty similar actually.
Yeah, now that we've talked through it, I think we're more similar than I thought we were going to.
I think the ones that I'll be higher on than you are where they're components that, because I've been so cognizant of my vision issues the last couple months since I finally went and got vision tested. I think I've been more into more enraged like that. I swear I can't get over the Maglev thing. I'm like, James Odak, myself, Rob, and Sam played at her house. She had a board game day, and I love the game. I own it. It's fun. And both James and I were just like, we were opposite sides of the table of each other, and like every 5 seconds we're like, just like angry, like. And there were several times in the game where like, we had a guy in our cart and moved him around and got to the place and went to dump him off and then realized, nope, that was a bronze, not a gold. And it was just so. The moment I got home that night, I brought my game home, busted it out, took the gold, put black dots on both sides, both heads of the gold guys, and threw it. And I know that they fixed it in the expansion, but I also think that the pink and purple are close too. They're a little less close, but in the right light. I think the other thing too is like,
lighting.
Depending on the light source, whether it's natural or incandescent or fluorescent or above or overhead, that could really change the view of a game. So I think that's that's also why I don't like glossy cards. Like that was another one I was gonna put on there, like cards, foil or glossy cards that catch light weird.
That'd be a
took
one
that one
for
off
me.
because that was a little, it was a little more nitpicky. I guess, so.
Yeah. Well, I was about to ask you if there were any you had strong feelings about, but I guess you just you told us.
Yeah, that was probably the one.
Yeah.
Probably that one. I think the other one I think is where it's clear that they planned the expansions ahead of time and didn't either make the room in the box. That one's all weird. Like you haven't played it, so Heat Pedal to the Metal comes, and it comes with 6 cards because I guess you can play up to 6 players, or you play up to 4, and then there's like 2 AI bots in there. But there's clearly 2 additional slots for 2 more cards to go up to 8, and there's clearly another well for cards. So it's like you guys already have an expansion ready to go. And I'm like, you just put it in the base game. Like, if you already know you have this expansion pretty much ready to go, like I guarantee you, this next year you'll see a Heat Pedal Metal expansion. Now up to 6 players or 8 players, and here's the 2 new cars, and here's that. I'm like, so one, it's a good thing you planned ahead so that your insert fits, but also BS. Just put it out when you put out the base game. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, so I think those are ones that kind of get to me, and the weird box shapes is another one that is a little weird. I don't like the tins, like tin boxes, because I store vertically. So tin tend to open.
Yeah, they'll wobble, right?
They wobble a little bit, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't get super enraged at some of those things. But I'm looking through the list here. The other one that might get me, I think the player aids. I like having little player aids, especially since I am always teaching my wife and her friends games, and so I know the game better, and I'd rather have them. I'd have enough player aids for all of them. So I usually will print out additional ones from BGG to have in the boxes of games, because I want to be, hey, here's your player aid. This will show you all the iconography, or this will show you your turn order every time. So it annoys me when there's one in the box. It's like, really?
Yeah, definitely.
Give me 4. Give me 4 or give me none,
Yes, I agree. Well, I guess we can pretty much wrap it up again. That was fun. I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as I do.
I'm hoping that I'm hoping if any of the folks listen to the podcast out there, join the Beans and Dice Discord server. You can find us on YouTube and find the Discord server from there. We have a channel for the podcast. We'd love to hear feedback about what you like or didn't like, or what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So I'll just do a quick shameless plug like I have every other couple weeks. The tickets for Southern Board Game Fest are on sale. Lafayette, Louisiana in October. We're a small con, but we have a lot of fun. Last year, Carlos and Dan and Rob came out and had a lot of fun. And this upcoming year, I think Rob and Dan and possibly Jim, Nick and possibly Mike as well just said he'd be
Jim
coming
Odak,
in. And Jim, sorry, Jim, I didn't mean to leave you out there.
Yeah.
But there'll be a little contingent of the Florida folks coming over and the West Coast folks in Mike. So just a plug for that. And of course, as usual, tune into the Call-In Show Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Call in and talk about games. You be a part of the show. That's what got me and Wayne to the show years ago, just calling in and being able to be a part. And they wanted us to stop calling in, so then we started being on the show, I guess. But no, I'm joking. But no, it's fun. You get to be a part of the conversation and not just be a passive observer, so it's a lot of fun.
Yep. And I think this Friday night, so I think, look at the actual date, the Friday the 16th, we're going to have our monthly board game, RPG chat. Ron from Ron Talks Table Talk, Carlos, myself, and I think maybe William from the Nerdy Weds. We've been doing for the last couple months now, just a once a month RPG show on Friday nights. So we're going to do it this Friday, June 16th. So
cool. I think that's about it. I think we'll wrap up. It looks like we're going to start uploading on Wednesdays now. No comment, Carlos. But anyway, we're going to keep it weekly and give us some feedback. With that being said, I'm Mitchell.
I'm Wayne.
And this is the Beans and Dice Podcast, the podcast about
how we game.
Take it easy.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.